folks and good friends here, the Chip and Margaret Liversidge, Jerry and Gretchen Davis, Claire Bowen, and Addie and John Bacon. And Jane's going to speak with all these folks.
Okay, we're going to have a fun discussion with these folks, and what I'm hoping with this is that you folks can identify with what they went through making their decision, what tipping points were for them, what attracted them, how they find a place, all these things that you folks are experiencing now. I think it's really important for you to understand that these residents went through the exact same things that you're going through. So listen to some of this in terms of what it does and parallels with your life. And I want to start with Chip and Margaret first. And I want you to tell us your story, first of all. Where'd you come from? And how did you find Highland Green? Let's start with those two right now.
Who would you like?
Where did you come from first? What's your story, your background?
All right, I'll go ahead. I'm from Canada, New Brunswick, and I had been widowed for about 5 years and was lonely, decided that I didn't want to be alone any longer. And I met Chip online. And
did you all hear that? They met online.
I said to Jane, I don't really think that's part of the story. She said, I think it is. It's relevant. So this is why I'm telling you this, and I don't have any problem with it myself, because I'm not an online type person, nor is my husband. However, you do things sometimes that you don't really know why you do them. And we saw each other for 3 years with my traveling from New Brunswick to Rangeley, where he lived, fortunately. Wasn't that far away. And then his driving up to my home in Canada. And this went on for 3 years, and then we married, and we've now been married for 4 years. So long story short, and I don't mean to make light of the rest of the story that is more relevant to the rest of these people, but Chip had a very lovely home on Loon Lake back in Rangeley, Maine, and I loved it. I certainly never thought that I'd ever want to leave there. In fact, I jokingly would complain and say, oh, I wish I had seen this place 20 years ago before this, because I loved it that much. Another thing is that I had experience of living in that type of environment, because I had also lived on a lake back in Canada for 22 years with my late husband. And so Chip and I were a very good fit for many reasons, because of our interests, our love of nature, and so on and so forth. But what we didn't count on, as Caroline said so aptly, age happens. And then what was fun at one time, looking after property and all of the things that go along with living in a lakeside environment, suddenly became a lot of work. And we started, for one thing, in my former life, I had loved to go to the ocean, much as Caroline had explained. And I said to Chip, as much as this mountain living is wonderful, I would like to go to the ocean for just 1 week next summer. So summer before last, was it summer before last?
Yeah.
We took a week. We rented a lovely little cottage down on the New Meadows River in Bath. And the reason we chose this area is that Chip in his field had worked in West Bath, and we chose that particular area. Didn't really know about Highland Green. We had seen the ads, but they didn't mean a whole lot to us. We didn't think we were ever going to leave that area. So, as they say, a funny thing happened on the way to the Topsom Fair Mall to pick up an outdoor carpet that we had ordered for our deck back on the lake in Rangeley. We saw Highland Green, saw the sign beside the road, and Chip said, well, why don't we just go in? It happened to be a Sunday. And in fact, I think we were on the way either to the beach or before this or golfing, I can't remember. We drove in and we were really quite taken with the whole area. We thought how beautiful. And we started out the next day doing something else. I can't remember exactly what. Chip said again, I think we should go back to Highland Green. And we met Will for the first time. That was a Monday. And we started talking to him, and I think all of us experienced the very same things. Are we really smart to be even thinking about this? However, it just progressed from there. And I'll finish by saying that we had a social get-together to meet people. I don't even think we had built at that time. And I said at that particular get-together that this whole experience has been like a giant 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that you'd spill out on a table, and you start turning the pieces over, and they started fitting together. And it's still very amazing to us. So on our closing, and I'll let Chip carry on the rest of the story, Will presented us with this jigsaw puzzle of one of our evenings here. But I'll never put it together,
It's a
Will.
picture of Chip and Margaret with Will at Highland Green. It's a jigsaw puzzle that's finally come together. Thank you for sharing that.
And
Living up in northern Maine, up in the mountains, most people who haven't lived there don't understand that you spend a lot of the summer getting ready for the winter. And that was one of the tipping points for us, was the fact that we were working so hard to maintain this house that I had built 25 years previously. And the house was in good shape, but it just took a lot of work. And in the wintertime, when all of our neighbors left for Florida and elsewhere in the winter, we were the only people on our road. And in Rangeley, you're 43 miles from the nearest hospital. We were 75 years of age. And we're waiting for the contracted plow person to arrive to plow the road and our driveway because it wasn't a town road. And it's not an easy situation. And we began to worry about this somewhat, particularly since both of us had been widowed previously. The other thing that happened was that during the following summer, I spent 3 days on the garage roof patching it up so it would pass inspection. And I began to think, 3 days on this roof at 75 years of age, probably not a good thing. And we had begun to look at a few other properties. We'd gone to South Carolina and North Carolina and talked to people who lived elsewhere. And every time we saw one of these properties, Margaret and I would look at each other and say, get me back to Maine. Because both of us had the North in our hearts, and sure enough, Highland Green and all of the chemistry, because I think it is a chemistry thing. The chemistry was right for us to move here. And then we found the process of working with Dan and Tim and Will and the rest of the staff here just terrific. I had built the house in Rangeley, living in Louisville, Kentucky at the time. It was originally a seasonal house. And we would come down here for the building process, and it was so much easier. And people were so professional, and everything, as Margaret said, it's a matter of turning the pieces over and everything fit. So it's very, very positive. And we haven't regretted it once.
And living here that's very appropriate, I think, what I almost said. Living here is loving it. I think, I don't know of anyone who doesn't share that feeling. And wonderful friends.
What was your tipping point? What told you that this was the right place? And you said something, I think, very important there in terms of the feeling. That's what I keep going back to, is this intangible that people realize after they have moved into a place. Those intangibles seem to be a little bit more important than the tangibles, the sticks, bricks, and the mortar. Because there's a side shoot there that you don't realize that you're getting, which is what you are describing. So tell me what the tipping point was for you, Chip.
probably the biggest issue was midwinter, after we had seen Highland Green for the first time. And we came back and we had this discussion that said, both of us are healthy. We've seen this nice alternative to mountain living. And we should think about moving when we can, not when we have to.
Mm-hmm. Making the choice for yourself.
Making the choice when you're able to. And this is a pretty active community. A lot of walkers. You look at the sidewalks and people are walking with their dogs and having conversations and doing things. And Will was showing the pickleball and bocce and so forth. And golf, great golf course here. And we're both golfers, so, and it's a golf community to a large extent. A lot of good friends that are golfers here. And we just said now is the time to do this rather than when we're unable to.
So just tell me 2 positive outcomes that you've realized since you've moved here. Not that you thought of, but since you've moved here, what were 2 positive things you didn't expect?
Well, I'm not sure we didn't expect these, but
Or the other room.
with the feeling of this as a positive community.
Mm-hmm.
And the friendships we have made just in the short year we've been here have been terrific.
Okay.
I think that's one very positive thing. And the other is the fact that there is so much going on here. I mean, not that Rangeley is a bad place to live. It's beautiful and nice there. But there are so many things we are members of the Friends of Bowdoin College. So we get to go to a lot of the Bowdoin events free. And the State Music Theater, and we go to the theater up in Lewiston with these folks. And the theater in Portland, we like that. There are just so many things. Margaret's doing art or watercolors and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of things to do and a lot of great people to do them with.
And you don't have to get up on that roof and do that snow maintenance
Absolutely.
anymore.
That's another thing, if I may add. No matter what the problem is, if you have a problem, and most houses, little things will happen. For instance, either your fireplace won't light because the battery's gone in the remote or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. The other day, for some reason or another, our boiler quit, that heats our hot water. Like that, you can call someone and they're there to
Mhm.
fix it for you. You don't have to seek and search around for people to come to your aid.
Mhm.
I think Steve Labes had a wonderful story that he told us one evening in which, by mistake, Sue had left the garage door open and their heating system was in the garage. And 2 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang, and Steve said, this man's voice said, Mr. Labes, you have to take care of closing your garage door or your system's going to freeze up. And he didn't know what, with sleep and all, what was happening and why this was even being told to him. And this man said to him, well, I'll come down and look after it if you'd like me to. And Steve said, well, where are you? He said, gardener. Do you know how far Gardner is? What, about half an hour, 40 minutes maybe away?
Mhm.
And of course, Steve realized by then that this fellow didn't have to come down. But I think it's so important to know that we have, Steve was just absolutely astounded by this. And he told all of us, he said, to think that there are people looking out for you that way. And I think it's pretty wonderful.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much. And let's go on to the Davises, Gretchen and John. Jerry, I'm sorry. Tell us just a little bit about your background first, where you came from,
Okay.
and how you found Highland Green.
Okay. With my husband's job, we were transferred around different places. We lived in various states, Illinois, Ohio, Virginia, Connecticut is where we finally finished. But we knew we wanted to come to Maine to retire. We had several ties to the state. So we chose Portland. We had a beautiful condo in Portland that we enjoyed for quite a few years, but something was missing. We had a lot of folks there who were weekend people or who still worked and weren't interested in socializing a great deal. And this wasn't really what we were looking for. So we started, I think I was the first one, drove through the Highlands and Highland Green just to look, to get an idea, and made a phone call and got lots of information to look at. And then we made an appointment and came by and started to learn about Highland Green and the difference between the two areas. So I'll let you say something.
Well, I don't know where to start really, except it was a long while before we even decided to move to Portland. That was going to be it. And we had, as Gretchen says, we were right down to the pier in downtown Portland. So we had a lovely location and everything that we needed. She didn't mention, we also have a summer place, which we've had since the late 60s up near Mount Katahdin, which we continue to have. And so our life was complete. We had that in the summertime, we had Portland in the wintertime, and we travel a lot, which we continue to do, and we still have a place up north. But it took us, I don't know, we were talking last night, we were at the Maine State Music Theater, and that's where we first heard about this. Wozleski, the developer, is a big supporter of that.
Right.
Little by little, it kept, kind of trickled in that this was an interesting place to be. The guy who designed the golf course is a guy named Dodson, who was a very well-known sports writer. So we read about a little bit about the development of the golf course. We're golfers, but we also do a lot of other things. And there's something here for everybody. You heard about the bocce court. Somebody developed that. It was an idea. Several of us jumped on board.
That was resident driven, was it not?
Yeah, it was. And
Totally
so is the
resident
pickleball.
driven. Mhm.
So things happen around here which are created internally, which is very nice. But the big thing that neither place really, I'm talking about north and south at this point, we kid about going south for the winter and it's here. But we did not have a sense of community in Portland at all. And that was something that was always missing because in the summertime we were always up north. And in the wintertime we were back to work and kids in school and this, that, and the other thing. We really didn't have I was a big commuter, 4 hours a day, and Gretchen was a teacher. So long story short, here we are almost 70 years old and saying, geez, we got to get into a community where there's something happening. So that kind of got us looking in this direction. And we were in Will very knowingly, and you'll all have, if you haven't experienced his professionalism, he really has it. He doesn't push you, but you get the message as to what is here. Long story short, he put us in touch with people here through either dinners or things like this, and got us in touch with the right people. We were able to get into some of the homes with people. It was a Red Cross
It was
Christmas event.
a Christmas open house.
Yeah. And
So we were supposed to be looking at Christmas decorations, but we were looking at houses.
we asked a lot of questions of those people. And I think that's really what got us interested here, because you go on and say, well, what's good about this place and what's bad? I heard a lot more good and virtually no bad at all. And that's from talking to a lot of different people from a lot of different areas. I mean, it wasn't 27 states as recently as 3 years ago, but it was a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And they all gave us kind of, I think, a feeling that, gee, this is a real going community, people our own age and similar interests. And even though, for instance, I like golf, I also like to do a lot. I'm a bird watcher and enjoy reading and walking. I mean, it's just a variety of things that we do as a couple. But it's the people that are here. Forget the architecture. I shouldn't say that. But I mean, we've all probably lived in perhaps nicer locations as far as aesthetic beauty and so forth. But this place has a sense of community. It's the greatest place we've ever lived, by far, way above our expectation. And I think that's really what you're going to find here. You're going to find a home, people who care. If you're in trouble, they'll help you. And people reach out no matter who you are, and make a go of making you feel at home and part of the community. So that's as strong as I can put it.
That's very strong,
Yeah.
and coming from a lot of different locations as well as the melting pot, as we've described it earlier, very unusual. You know, you find destination locations in the Sunbelt area or further down south where the temperature is a little bit more temperate and kind to folks. But there's something special, as both of these couples have related, something magical, something that fit that puzzle, that transition that they were in. And I'm not hearing a whole lot about the houses still. So, you know, it's really, I'm hoping that you're absorbing some things, you folks who are considering, because they were you. A year ago, 2 years ago, they were you. They were sitting where you are in transition. So thank you, Jerry and Gretchen. Claire,
Yes.
let's go on to you. How about sharing your story with everybody?
Well, I started looking at Highland Green 3 years before I moved in, so you could call me indecisive. But I really was not ready to retire at that point. So I was just kind of looking ahead, scoping it out pretty carefully in other areas. But in the meantime, or prior to that, I had bought a condo just outside of Portland because that's where I was going to retire. However, one day, I happened to come by, met Will, and that was the beginning of a 3-year journey. And I have to say right up front that, and Will's not in this room, that Will was absolutely amazing and wonderful. He really gets to know you. And after a while has a sense in terms of what you might like, what you might be attracted to. And so that 3-year journey became more and more comfortable for me. And like everybody else has said this morning, and you know, bear with us as we repeat this, it is the strong sense of community that has drawn us here. Very, very strong. We meet every time we came in, we met people. I am alone, so a sense of community is very, very important to me. And I've lived here now, not quite for 7 months, but I feel like I've been here for 7 years. It's just very comfortable. The diversity of people is extraordinary. We come from different walks of life, and we have different interests. And what is really nice is that along the way, you gain new interests. Like I am starting to gain an appreciation and an interest in art. I flunked art in school, you know, and I next fall I will sign up for an art class. That was unheard of in my background. And taking up new activities. People are really friendly. I'm a walker. I mean, I walk a lot. I have a dog. Now, if you own a dog around here, you meet people very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, you remember the dog's names before you remember the people's names, but that's okay. That's very acceptable. I have to talk about healthcare, though, because that's part of my story.
Okay, please do.
I was a hospital CEO until I retired about a year ago. And so I knew that wherever it was that I was going to relocate to, there had to be quality health care. That was not an option. As we get older, it becomes very, very important. So I did a fair amount of digging for information on Mid-Coast Hospital here in Brunswick. And I did know that it had a good reputation. But I also had the faculty to be able to research on the internet sites that, you know, hospital people can go to. And there was no question in my mind that that hospital is superb and outstanding. It is capable of taking care of probably 90% of the health issues. And I had a chance to meet some of the people at the hospital. And to this day, I go there frequently to talk with people. So if anybody has a concern about what's available for healthcare, you have Midcoast here, and then you have Maine Medical Center a half hour down the road for very serious conditions. And so that was a tipping point for me. That needed to happen. The other avenue of interest was of the financial condition of the community. The condo association that I belonged to just outside of Portland was not well managed financially. And so I experienced having assessments imposed on us, wild assessments as a matter of fact, and the fees were getting higher and higher, and there was no value there. And so the health of our community needed to be there. And Will opened up the books as much as I wanted him to. We talked a lot about it. To this day, I do spend time with John Coughlin looking at the books and reserves and things like that. This is a very healthy community from a financial point of view. It is solid. I just didn't want to repeat the experience that I'd had just outside of Portland. So that was pretty important to me. There's so much to be said about this place, you know? And living in a community that is close to a college, more than half of my life has been living in places like, you know, where Dartmouth is and where Bates is, and now Bowdoin. And I think someone here mentioned being a friend of Bowdoin. That is an extraordinary deal. And we are privy to participate, attend different activities, even audit classes. Next fall I plan on taking a class on the Supreme Court. Where else would you have an opportunity like that? So it is limitless with regard to opportunity, with friends, with people who are here to help you, and deep friendships happen.
Mhm.
They just do.
Mhm.
And so
So you explained that you were happily in a condominium outside of Portland that you thought you were going to retire in.
Mhm.
What changed?
well, the financial condition,
financial
of the
condition was
community certainly made me think. And I am from Maine. I'm from Lewiston. I'm just from up the road originally. I am a true maniac. And I don't know. One day I just came here and probably out of boredom, or I'm not sure, because I've always, my compass has always been toward Portland, not Midcoast.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about, because
Yeah.
you took yourself out of an urban environment where there's a lot of stuff happening there.
Yeah.
And you put yourself into this environment that is more on a nature side of it. So there was a shift.
There
There was
was.
a transition that happened with you
Yeah.
on that.
Well, when you look at the location, Portland is half hour down the road. Now, I did have a struggle with that at first, because I was just used to being there in 5 minutes. But now it's a 30-minute drive. It's not bad. There are all the amenities and the activities and restaurants in Portland. But here at Midcoast, there is so much of another world. Midcoast, Maine is very different than the Portland region, and very different from the Algonquin, York region of Maine. And with the nature preserve, hiking, snowshoeing in the winter. I was never bored this winter, and I was new here. I really didn't know a whole lot of people when I first moved in, and snowshoeing and walking around, you just meet people immediately. But it was the promise of yet another environment, the Midcoast and everything that this community stands for with regard to nature preserves.
Good, all right, thank you. Last but not least, we have John and Addie Bacon. Which one wants to
Why don't you
start?
start,
Tell
and
us,
I'll-
your story. Tell us your story, where you came from. And
Well, our story begins in Connecticut, where we were both born and worked pretty much, entirely our entire careers. I was 70 years old, still working, and but thinking, well, 71, I can probably still work at 71, but I think I'm going to choose not to work so much.
And what were you working at?
Well, I was a mechanical contracting business.
Mm-hmm.
So, somewhere along the line about then, Addie and I sat down and said, well, we need to have a 5-year plan. And what are we going to be? Where are we going to be in 5 years from now for the last lapse?
Or the next stage, as I
Next-
would
That's a
call it.
better word.
For these next laps.
That's a better phrase.
So we thought about that, and we both decided, well, that was a reasonable solution. We both had some ideas. I think both of our ideas centered around Maine. Clearly, they did center around Maine. Our one son lives here, and with his wife, and our grandchildren are here. And we thought it would be probably ideal. We also both have had a long association with Maine. My time goes back probably about 1953 when I first climbed Mount Katahdin, and then thereafter spending some time with my folks at their little shack up in the North Woods. And so I came every year. I was a teenager then, so you can kind of do the math. And I don't think there was ever a focus on any other destination.
Never south. We were gonna go north.
Addie became convinced that it seemed reasonable to join a community such as this. But we had not researched such a thing at that point. I was thinking more of a little 4 acres somewhere, a little wood lot, and a little barn, and a place where I could hang my tools. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she was right. You move into the woods and you don't know anybody, you have no community, and you don't have the facilities that these folks have been talking about. So gradually I sort of swapped over to this line of thinking. Somewhere around 1970, or 2012, 11, actually 11. I just sort of completed helping my son get a house built in Freeport. So now I was free. But during that winter I worked here at that house. I was sort of snooping around. And I'd work up here during the week, and Addie was back in Connecticut holding down the household. And every weekend when I'd go home, we'd talk about this, and I'd tell her where I'd been, what I'd seen. Somewhere along the line, I read an article in Down East about this community when it was in its infancy. And it was a long article about John Wozleski and a particular environmentalist who was sort of at swords points for a bit. And then John and this particular individual sort of came together in discussions about this 400 more or less acre spot that we have here. And that was an interesting story. And it basically evolved into what you see here, which is somewhat unique. And I'd always sort of had that research, or not research, but that background in my mind. So one day I pulled in here and drove around. Subsequent to that, Addie and I were going home from our shack up in the North Woods, back to Connecticut. I had this pickup truck load of junk on the back, ladders and scaffolding and all kinds of things that looked like the Waltons. But we drove in and went down to the far reaches, and we were turning around at the very last house right next door to where Jerry and Gretchen live now. And the woman there waved. Addie said,
Back up.
oh,
She's approachable.
She's friendly.
Let's talk to her.
Let's go talk to her. So we wheeled around, went into her yard, and she came over, and we talked to her for some time. She invited us into her house. And we spent probably close to an hour there. And we left. On the way out,
This is where
we stopped here to pick up a brochure.
without, sneak in, get the brochure and get out of
We
here.
didn't want to.
Next thing we're now, we're in the conference room with Will.
Ended up in the conference room. And we had a very nice discussion, and we were still pretty much scattered. Our thoughts were scattered at that point. But anyway, over the evolution of this thing, when we got home very shortly after, by plan, we had started putting our house on the market. The house was pretty good shape. We knew a barn was gonna need a roof in a year or two. We didn't wanna go through that. So all the pieces of the puzzle were put together there as far as downsizing. We tried to sell our house ourselves for a couple of weeks just by polling our neighbors and a little simple sign on the fence. Nothing really happened. So we got a realtor. She put it on the internet and bang, 24, 48 hours, we had the buyer.
It was an antique house,
So now the pressure was mounting.
1754, so.
They wanted to move in 30 days. We said, ooh, we can't do that. So we escaped and went back to Maine, and we had another conference with Will. He showed us around. We wanted an existing house because we didn't have time to build a house if we were going to secure this new owner or this new buyer. And the market, you might recall, right then was very, very, very slow.
Tough market.
I mean, houses like ours would be on the market for 2 and 3 and 4 years. So we knew we had to do something. We had to get our thoughts together. We came back and we had another conference with Will. In the meantime, I'd sort of shed my idea about this place out in the woods. And we had this conference and we didn't decide really on the
Right
house
then.
until we were driving home. And we were on the interstate. I think we were just getting off 95 on 495 south. And made a call to Will, and we made an offer. And Will said, well, I'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. He called up the prior owner, called back. Well, anyway, to make a long story
We
short,
turned around.
we made a deal on 495.
That's not like us, we,
Now, we're not usually quite that impulsive, but
But
you
why?
have to understand that.
Why? I know that you had to you had a place to go, you had to find a place to go because your house was being sold.
Right.
right.
But what was it? Tell me what was it?
Well,
that
we
spoke
knew,
to you?
I think in our minds, we knew we were moving to Highland Green. We had
There was
already,
enough about,
there was enough about Highland Green that had convinced us that this is where we wanted and needed to be.
I knew they were moving to Highland Green before they did.
Yes.
You always do.
Yeah.
They walked.
Will has a rather penetrating mind who sneaks in there,
he
but
is kind of
he
focused.
perhaps knew, but we needed an extra few hours. Is that right, Will?
No, you needed you walked in, we chatted for 10, 15 minutes, and then you went away, and I said, well, they'll be here.
Well, anyway, to sort of wind this long story down, you've heard from these other folks here who are about the friendships you develop, which, as far as I'm concerned, should be in capital letters here. That's why we're here, really. And we have developed any number of very good, great, highly valued friends. We are not great golfers. We do play golf periodically. Neither Addie or I are great golfers, but we go out and have fun.
And it's not a prerequisite
It's
that you
not a
go over.
prerequisite.
Yeah.
It's not a prerequisite, and we're invited often, and we often turn them down just because we don't want to hold up their day. We're looking forward to playing bocce. We were a part of the development of that bocce court. we have enjoyed. I would have to tell you, during the blizzard, the winter before last, a fellow neighbor of ours called up and said, John, let's go snowshoeing, and we'll go over to the by the 8th hole, and we'll cook up some hot dogs and have a beer. You might remember, you might not, but the snow drifts here were like this. So Don Murphy and I donned our snowshoes and got out our little backpacks and bottles of water and cold beer and a couple of hot dogs. We went over and foraged some firewood and built a little fire and had hot dogs and beer for lunch. But that's probably the first to happen. But
Endless possibilities.
endless possibilities.
Right.
Endless possibilities. And,
So if there were two unexpected surprises that you gleaned after you moved in here, what were they?
Well,
Addie, what do you think?
One thing that I think that probably goes along with the community effort here, I'm on the activities committee here. In fact, we just met this morning, once a month, and I think from a sociability standpoint, and this is important in the effort here, when you become a member of Highland Green, you suddenly realize that there is a sense of community right off, like everybody has said here. But I thought, joining an activities committee, you get to meet people, and there's something going on, whether you want it or not. It's all voluntary. Every month, we try to plan things that, like the Derby. They had a Derby, Kentucky Derby party. And then they have a lobster fest and a chowder fest. And all those things just help you get established in the community. And I think there are endless opportunities. And then every month they call it a green bag social. And it's a lunchtime effort. You come in, make your lunch and come in and listen to a speaker.
we had Linda Greenlaw here.
Yeah.
So you've heard of her. She came and spoke. She came to speak for an hour and spoke 2.5 hours. Or answered questions for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. And she didn't want a
She was
canned
perfect.
speech, but she just, and everybody here, she couldn't get over how receptive we were to her. And not long ago, we had a Penobscot Indian come down and talk. Very, very interesting.
Victoria Wyeth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Andrew's granddaughter came and spoke to us.
yeah. But it was just, I don't know, there's just a lot going on. And there again, I think it's there if you want it. And then if you don't, if you're here for the benefits or the plowing and the mowing of the grass, that's fine too. There's such a mix of people out of the, 160 homes?
Lots of volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
Lots of volunteer
Lots and
opportunities.
lots of people here volunteer.
And I think that's a tipping point for me, because I like people and I like being out and about. But it's never anything that you have to do. It's just got the opportunity. And I think the other tipping point is the location. You jump on
Supreme.
295 and you can go north to our camp on a lake and we have family in Connecticut. We jump on the highway and go down quite often, 4 hours to our family. So you don't feel like you're, down south and, you can't, it's a trip,
And if you do go away, your home is secure. There's a system here where people look in on your house weekly.
Your family's still all back here doing it for you. The family of the community, all back
Right.
here
Exactly.
helping you out.
Exactly.
Exactly. And people are ill, there are people who will step in and step up to the plate and help. There's all sorts of things. It's terrific.
Claire,
Yes.
tell me something that you didn't expect, that you did derive out of here when you got here. Something that you didn't
What I
expect.
didn't expect. I think it was the diversity of activities. There's fly fly catching or
Fly
fly.
Fly fishing.
Fishing.
Yeah, that.
Fly catching.
Obviously, I don't go to that.
Fly catching.
Yeah, there are black flies.
There's woodworking. There are fitness classes
Uh-huh.
that are offered. There's golf. I mean, we just could go on and on in terms of the activities. There's a reading club. There are
book club.
two book clubs, very different from one another, for the more serious reader and the more casual novel type reader. And art, as I had mentioned earlier, it just goes on and on and on. And we add to those activities. People talked about the bocce court that was built this summer, and the pickleball court. Yeah, and those two events of the grand opening of those two sports here really were initiated by residents, and so residents here are heard. Okay, that was a surprise to me in terms of how heard we are.
Well, residents really direct the activities. It's
Right.
their
Yeah.
activities to choose or not. Management is not saying you have to do this and here's what we're doing
Exactly.
for you. It's up to you.
Yeah.
It's your lifestyle.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the word lifestyle just sums it up quite nicely.
Mhm. It's not retirement, it's a lifestyle. That's what we're trying to get across here. It's not retirement, you're not parking somewhere, as somebody said earlier. I think that it was Caroline. We're moving to a retirement community. The kids are being concerned that they're being parked somewhere. That's not it at all.
There's no parking place.
There is no parking place. Yeah.
You should
But if you want to
just see our
park,
calendar.
but if you want to park, you can park. That's okay.
Right.
Jerry and Gretchen, what was unexpected for you once you moved in? What did you not see or did you not think would be part of?
Well, I go back to the social thing. I mean, it was much better than I ever experienced or, could have guessed at.
Could have imagined it.
Could have
yeah.
imagined, right?
Right.
And just the participation in the community. We didn't talk a lot about things that have developed aside from bocce and pickleball, but you also have this whole concept of reserves and so forth and so on. That was developed by people here. We have several lawyers, we've got accountants that live here, all professional people.
And we're gonna get into that financial strength and stability
That's fine.
at lunch. Will's gonna lead a discussion on that, and that is.
There is a
huge.
lot of strength in that.
Yeah,
So,
and as I said earlier, I traveled the country. I've seen literally thousands of these communities over the last 20 years, and the reserve strength in this community is very solid. From my experience out there in the field, it doesn't always happen, and Claire was explaining a big assessment that came on hers.
Yeah.
That's poor planning. That's not looking to the future, but the commitment is here. Well, if you wanted to sum it up for folks, knowing that you were where they are now, you were there. They're now in transition, trying to make decisions. What would a word of advice from you be for them? Anybody?
Don't wait too long
Don't wait too
in
long.
your decisions.
Well, you guys are planners, so you were looking ahead.
Well,
If you were looking ahead 5 years, I know that you were planners. So that was important to you. Don't wait too long. Continue to enjoy your life and
Right.
complement your lifestyle with all these possibilities. I look at it as it is a new adventure. It's a new stage that people enter into and that they embrace. And what I have witnessed is people blossoming in ways that they never thought they would do. We just heard about an art class that you were going to take, and you're not an artist. You flunked art, but you're going into this, embracing it. That's very exciting. That's what communities offer. That's what community life offers, is that. So, don't wait too long. Okay, that was from Addie. Anyone else?
just a comment from the point of view of who you meet here too. The degrees of separation are very few. You're going to run into people you know or know your friends or your relations, Gretchen has a great story which you could tell
What's
about.
that?
I was married to.
Oh. People are not here. A lot of us get together to have dinner at the pub on a Wednesday night. It started over the winter, and one evening, one man and another woman discovered that they were from adjoining hometowns in Massachusetts. So they started talking back and forth, and he said to her, maybe you know a man who used to be my best friend, but I've lost track of him. And he gave the name, and she said, oh, he was my first husband.
You've heard the phrase, birds of a feather flock
Yeah,
together.
right.
Well, I'm here to say that this segment, this powerful niche, this quiet underroar that is happening within active lifestyle communities is not just birds flocking together. It's the entire species of birds. It's the entire class of birds that get together and come together and live together and forge existences and relationships with each other that they never thought could complement their life. And through these stories from diverse backgrounds, these are all diverse backgrounds, all diverse reasons why they chose it, what attracted them to this. You're hearing that it's not about the sticks, bricks, and mortar, although when we get into this afternoon's discussion on customizing and personalizing your homes, you will hear how great the construction is and how the process is. So that is not put to the side. But what resonates with me at every community that is palpable and really coalesced as a community across the country is this spirit of community, this spirit of being with each other and wanting to forge those new friendships. You have friends and you have family, but we always have room for more friends and more close acquaintances that are nearby. And that's what this provides us here. Any last words from our panel? Chip.
I just think of two activities that we really haven't talked about. During the winter, the first 3 holes of the golf course are groomed for cross-country skiing. So people who like that sort of activity, you don't have to be an expert, and you know, it's a great place to cross-country ski. The other thing is that I know a number of us are avid readers, and Topsom has an outstanding library. People that have not lived here, it's just something to be aware of. It's just a terrific facility with a lot of good programs, and since we have been here the short year, we've really enjoyed doing a lot of things at the library. So 2 diverse kinds of activities. You don't have to be an expert to get involved in these things, but you know, it's a great learning experience, and I think we all find in one way or another you're never too old to learn. And so we really enjoy that.
Yeah.
Try something new.
Right. And you know, that goes back to what John's philosophy has been with this community and all of his communities, and that is that they are not apart from the community, they are a part of the community that surrounds them. So you just heard Chip saying something that he did inside the community, some things that he does outside the community, but the gist is that it's all here for you. If you can do that. You can go stroll down the town in Brunswick and go to the little shops and order your flowers or go to the dry cleaners, and all of those conveniences are here for you to enjoy with this very unique lifestyle that is offered here. So thank you, panelists. That was wonderful. Thank you all for sharing.